The wind swept across the dusty plains of Red Valley, carrying with it the smell of dry grass, sweat, and the sharp edge of danger. It was late afternoon in the summer of 1884, and the heat had pressed itself over the Arizona territory like a heavy blanket. Most folks stayed inside on days like this, but today the whole town of Red Valley gathered near the sheriff's office, drawn by the kind of spectacle that made even decent people curious. Clint Rollins stood at the edge of the crowd, his hat pulled low, shadowing eyes the color of cold steel. At 36, he was known across 3 counties for his ranch, the Rollins Spread, and for his quiet way of handling problems that would break a weaker man. Broad-shouldered, tall, and tempered by years of hard work, he looked carved from the same stubborn stone as the land he lived on. He hadn't planned on stopping in town long. He'd only come for fencing wire and salt blocks. But then he heard the murmurs. They finally caught her. Meanest little hellcat in the whole territory. Wild as a Mustang and twice as dangerous. Clint would have ignored it, but the next shout froze him mid-step. Bring her out. 2 deputies dragged a young woman into the sunlight, shackled at the wrists. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some stepped back. Others leaned forward with hungry fascination. She looked half feral, half angel. Her tangled dark hair whipped around her face like a storm. Dirt streaked her arms. A bruise bloomed along her cheekbone. Her dress, what was left of it, was torn, hanging unevenly around her knees. But it was her eyes that stopped Clint cold. Amber, bright, wild, defiant, not scared, not broken. She looked at the crowd like she expected them to come at her teeth first, and she was ready. This here's the wild girl Devil's Canyon. Deputy Collins shouted. Caught stealing, resisting arrest, and biting 3 men who tried to restrain her. She ain't right, someone in the crowd muttered. She's an animal, another said. She's a survivor, Clint thought. The sheriff stepped forward, clearing his throat. Town council decided she's too dangerous to keep in our jail. Territory law allows us to auction her off to someone willing to take responsibility for her. A wave of whispers, some shocked, some eager. The girl jerked against the deputies. I ain't property, she shouted, voice raw and fierce. Touch me again, and I'll tear your throat out. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else spat. Clint's jaw tightened. The sheriff raised a hand. Settle down. Let's get this done. Bidding starts at $20. A rancher near the front lifted his hat. 20, 25. Another called. 30. She ain't worth the trouble, someone shouted. Look at her. She's crazy. I ain't crazy, the girl snapped. I just ain't about a bow. Her voice sparked something in Clint. A memory. A promise he once made to himself long ago when life had taken everything from him. Another rancher stepped forward. Lyle Hargrove, a man Clint despised on sight. A cruel grin twisted Hargrove's mouth. Hell, I'll take her. She'll break easy enough. The girl spat at him, hitting his boot. Try and see, coward. The crowd roared with laughter. Clint's hand curled into a fist at his side. 35, Hargrove shouted. 40, 45. She ain't a dog you can beat into obedience, Clint muttered under his breath. A sick feeling crawled up his spine as he watched Hargrove step closer, victory already in his eyes. The deputies held the girl tighter, expecting a fight. She glared at Hargrove with pure hatred, chest rising and falling fast. Not fear, anger, fury, raw pride. And Clint knew she would die before letting a man like that own her. 50, Hargrove barked. The auctioneer lifted his hand. Any more? The girl saw what was coming. Her breath hitched. She clenched her jaw, but her eyes, those blazing amber eyes, dimmed with a kind of exhausted resignation. The same look Clint had once seen in the mirror after burying the last of his family. Clint stepped forward before he even realized he'd moved. 100, he said. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Hargrove spun around. What in hell? Rollins? You losing your mind. Clint met his stare, without blinking. You heard me. 100 going once. The auctioneer called gleefully, as if the devil himself had blessed the sale. You can't just... Hargrove sputtered. 100 going twice. Clint rested one hand on his belt buckle, not on his gun, just a quiet warning. Unless you'd like to go higher? Hargrove hesitated. His hand twitched near his holster. A murmur went through the crowd. Everyone knew Clint Rollins wasn't a man you cross lightly. Hell with this, Hargrove snarled. Take the savage. She'll slit your throat before sunup. The auctioneer slammed his gavel into a crate. Sold. The deputies dragged the girl toward Clint. She thrashed, kicking him hard in the shin, and nearly broke free. Let go of me, she roared. I ain't going with nobody. Clint held up a hand. Release her. You sure, Rollins? A deputy asked. She's liable to bolt. If she does, I'll deal with it. The cuffs came off with a sharp click. The girl jerked away instantly, breathing hard, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Clint didn't move toward her, didn't reach for her, didn't try to touch her. He simply asked one quiet question. What's your name? She glared at him. Why? So you can own it too? No, Clint said. So I know what to call the woman I just saved from hell. She blinked, surprise flickering across her face. Then she whispered, barely audible, Riley. Clint tipped his hat. All right, Riley. You can come with me, or you can stay here with every man who just tried to buy you. Riley looked at the crowd, looked back at Clint. Then, chin high and eyes burning like wildfire, she stepped toward him, not behind him, beside him. And the crowd watched as the wild girl no man could tame walked out of Red Valley with the only man who didn't try to break her spirit. The ride out of Red Valley was quiet at first, the kind of quiet that felt heavy rather than peaceful. The sun dipped low behind the distant hills, throwing long shadows across the dusty trail. Clint kept his pace slow, giving Riley room to breathe. She rode the spare bay mare he always kept tied behind his wagon. Her posture was tense, every muscle alert, like she expected an attack from behind. Clint didn't look at her directly, but he watched her out of the corner of his eye, the way she held the reins too tight, the way her gaze scanned the horizon constantly, the way she sat tall even though exhaustion clung to her like dust. She was bone-tired, starving, and bruised, but she wasn't broken, and Clint respected the hell out of that. You gonna stare at me all night? Riley snapped suddenly, not bothering to look at him. Clint lifted a brow. Ain't staring. Just making sure you don't fall off that horse. I won't. You will if you pass out. I said I won't. Her voice shook just a little. Just enough for Clint to hear the truth beneath the defiance. She didn't want anyone to notice, but she was scared. Not of him. Of everything. He nudged his gelding closer, slowing the whole string. We'll camp soon. Riley stiffened. Why? So you can tie me up while I sleep? If I want to control you, Clint said evenly, I wouldn't have paid $100 to get you out of that pit. She glared at him. Then why did you? Clint didn't answer right away. He took his time, guiding his horse around a rocky patch on the trail. The sky overhead shifted from orange to deep purple. Because, he said finally, I saw a person worth saving, even if you don't believe it yet. Riley scoffed. You don't know nothing about me. I know enough. She looked away sharply, jaw clenched, like the words struck someplace tender. They rode another 20 minutes before Clint found a place he was looking for, an old cottonwood beside a shallow creek, a spot he used often on long days. He dismounted first, tying his gelding to a sturdy branch. Riley stayed mounted, eyes narrowed, shoulders tight. This where you kill me? She asked, her tone half serious, half daring him to lie. Clint stopped mid-step. If I wanted to harm you, Riley, Red Valley would have let me. Nobody that would have lifted a finger to stop it. His quiet honesty hit harder than a shout. Her sharpness softened for half a second. Then she slid out of the saddle, landing lightly despite her bruises. She kept distance between them, pacing by the creek. Clint let her. No sudden moves. No commands. She was wild, and wild things needed space. Clint set up camp effortlessly. Fire lit. Pot of beans on. Bedrolls laid out. He tossed her a tin cup. Water's clean. Drink. I don't want anything from you, Riley muttered. You want water. She did. Badly. Her lips were cracked from heat and fear. After a long hesitation, she crouched beside the creek and dipped the cup. As she drank, Clint caught sight of her wrists. Raw, bruised, cut deep from weeks or months of restraints. The sight burned something hot inside him. "What happened to your wrists?" he asked gently. Riley froze, water dripping from the cup. "Nothing. Ain't nothing." She shot him a glare sharp enough to cut. "Stop asking questions." "All right." He didn't push, didn't move closer. He just went back to stirring the beans. After a long silence, Riley spoke again, voice low. "Men think chains work, but they don't." Clint looked at her then. Really looked. She wasn't talking about metal. "They break bones," she continued. "Break skin. But they don't break me. That's clear. Shouldn't be." Her voice cracked on the last word, so soft Clint barely heard it. He kept his tone steady. "Sit. Eat. Then get some sleep. We'll reach the ranch by midday tomorrow." She didn't move. "What if I run?" "That's your choice." "You won't stop me?" "Nope." "Why not?" Clint met her fiery gaze calmly. "Ain't my place to cage you. You go, you go. You stay, you stay." "Why would I stay?" "That's for you to decide." Riley blinked, uncertain. Maybe for the first time since he'd seen her. She moved closer slowly, like a spooked mare testing the air. She took the bowl from his hand, sank onto the ground, and ate like she hadn't tasted food in days, which Clint suspected was close to the truth. When they finished, Clint offered her the bedroll farther from the fire. "You take whichever one you want." "Why give me the choice?" she asked. "'Cause it's yours." She hesitated. "You ain't gonna come near me?" "No." "Swear it." "I don't make promises I won't keep." She stared at him in the firelight, searching for lies. She didn't find any. Finally, she lay down, pulling the blanket around her wounded, weary body. Her voice came out after a long time, small and confused. "You ain't like other men." Clint poked the fire, letting sparks lift into the sky. "Didn't aim to be." Riley shifted on the bedroll. "Clint, yeah. You bought me?" "No. I bought your freedom." Silence fell again. Not the heavy kind from earlier, but something warmer, something fragile. Before sleep finally dragged her under, Riley whispered one last question. "If I run tomorrow, will you be mad?" "No," Clint answered softly. "Just disappointed." Her breath hitched, and for the first time, Riley didn't look like a wild creature ready to bite. She looked like a girl who'd never had anyone disappointed for losing her. When she finally fell asleep, Clint kept watch under the stars, thinking about the moment he'd seen her on that auction platform. A wild girl no man could tame. But Clint Rollins didn't want to tame her. He wanted to see what she became when she finally knew she was safe. By the time the morning sun climbed over the red cliffs, Riley was already awake. She sat beside the creek, her knees drawn to her chest, watching the water move around the stones. Clint didn't disturb her. He saddled the horses quietly, keeping his distance, giving her room to think. When she finally stood and approached him, her face held a strange mix of defiance and uncertainty. "I didn't run," she said. "I noticed. Don't read nothing into it." "I won't." But something had changed, and they both knew it. They rode in silence through the warming plains. The land around them turned from rugged canyon pathways to rolling grass stretching toward the horizon. Around noon, a cluster of buildings appeared in the distance. Tall barn, log house, wide corral, Rollins Ranch. Riley slowed her horse, her shoulders tense again, breath catching in her throat. "You got a problem with heights?" Clint asked gently. "No." "You got a problem with ranches?" She hesitated. "I ain't been around people much. Not real ones. Not decent ones." "Well," Clint said, "we ain't perfect, but we try." When they reached the yard, two ranch hands stepped out from a barn. Tom, a thick-shouldered man with sharp eyes, and Jesse, barely out of boyhood but strong as a young bull. Tom wiped his hands on his vest. "Boss, you're back early." His gaze slid to Riley. He frowned. "And you brought company." Clint dismounted. This is Riley. She'll be staying here. Tom's brows shot up. You sure about that? Riley stiffened instantly. She expected the insult, the threat, the shove away. Her hand even twitched toward a knife she didn't have. Clint stepped between them. I'm sure. Tom opened his mouth, but one look at Clint shut him up fast. Riley watched Clint with something like surprise, maybe gratitude, maybe confusion. Clint led her toward the house. Inside, you need food, rest, and we need to dress those wrists. Riley pulled her hands back instinctively. I don't need help. Didn't say you did. I said you deserve it. Her breath hitched, betraying a crack in her armor. Inside, the big kitchen smelled like coffee and cornbread. Clint pushed a plate toward her. Eat. She stared at the food like it was a trap, but hunger eventually won, and she ate in fierce, silent gulps. When she finished, Clint sat across from her. No pressure, no raised voice, no threats. Riley, he began slowly, you're safe here. But if you want to leave, I won't stop you. Her jaw clenched. Why do you keep saying that? Because you ain't a prisoner. Never were. You paid for me. I paid to get you away from men who wanted to hurt you. She looked down at her hands. I don't know how to be tame, Clint. Good, he said. I don't need tame. That startled her. Clint leaned forward just a little. What I need is someone strong. Someone honest. Someone who fights for herself. She looked at him sharply. You don't even know me. I know enough. She stood abruptly and walked to the doorway. She didn't run, didn't lash out, just stood there breathing hard, like she was fighting something inside. Clint, she said without turning. Yeah. People try to own what they save. I'm not people. Riley's shoulders trembled. You keep saying that, she whispered. I don't know if I believe you. You will. Hours passed before she came back into the main room. This time, she wasn't shaking. She wasn't angry. She looked different, like someone who'd chosen something, even if she didn't want to admit it. I want to earn my stay, she said. Work for the food you give me. Clint nodded. All right. She blinked. Just like that. You work the way you fight, and you'll be an asset here. A strange expression crossed her face. One Clint hadn't expected. Pride. Days turned into a week. Riley learned quickly, faster than Clint or Tom had expected. She could already rope better than Jesse by the third day. She handled the horses with gentleness that animals responded to instantly. She carried heavy feed sacks like they weighed nothing, climbed fences with wildcat ease, and never once complained. But the nights were different. Sometimes Clint heard her footsteps pacing outside. Sometimes he heard her breathing hard in her room, wrestling nightmares alone. He never went to her door, never tried to force a conversation. He waited. One night, the storm broke inside her instead of outside. Riley burst into the barn after chores, slamming a pitchfork into the wall, so hard the handle cracked. She was shaking, wild, panicked, eyes bright, with fear Clint hadn't seen since Red Valley. He stepped forward carefully. Riley, don't. Her voice cracked. Don't come close. Okay. She pressed her back to the stall door. Tears filled her eyes. Angry tears. The kind only someone who never cries finally lets fall. I woke up, she choked. Thought I was back in that canyon. Thought they had me again. Thought I was chained. She covered her face. I ain't weak, she whispered. I ain't. Clint's voice stayed low and steady. No, you're strong. Stronger than anyone I know. She shook her head violently. Then why does it still hurt? Why can't I forget? Clint moved one step closer. She didn't stop him this time. Because you're human, he said softly. Not an animal. Not a monster. Not an outlaw to be hunted. He reached out, slow as sunrise, and touched her shoulder. She flinched but didn't pull away. You survived hell, he murmured. Now you got to learn how to live after it. Riley lowered her hands. Tears streaked her dirty cheeks. She stared at him like she was trying to understand something impossible. No one's ever cared what I felt, she whispered. I care. Why? Because you deserve someone who does. Silence filled the barn. Warm, heavy, full of meaning neither of them dared say out loud. Riley took a shaky breath. Clint, yeah. If I choose to stay, you got to know something. All right. I ain't ever gonna be soft or gentle or proper. Clint stepped forward, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. I don't want soft, he said. I want honest. I want fierce. I want you. Riley swallowed hard. I don't know how to give anything back. You already have. Her brow furrowed. What? You stayed. Riley blinked slowly, as if that truth hit somewhere deep she didn't even know existed. Then, without another word, she leaned her forehead against Clint's chest. It wasn't an embrace. It wasn't surrender. It was trust, the one thing she'd never given anyone. Clint closed his eyes and rested his hand lightly, carefully, against her back. This time, she didn't flinch. By the end of the week, the whole ranch knew the truth. Clint Rollins hadn't tamed Riley. He'd earned her, and she, wild, wounded, untameable Riley, had finally found a place she didn't have to run from. She rode beside Clint now, not behind him, never behind him. And when he looked at her, eyes fierce, shoulders strong, spirit unbroken, he knew one thing for certain. The wild girl no man could tame had ridden straight into his heart.